This is Dimitri Wakuf, and this is the 16th episode of my video series, Mindshift. As some of you know, the purpose of Mindshift is to present you with powerful perspectives from outstanding people who I consider one of the thought leaders of nowadays. Today's Mindshifter is a coach, philosopher, and also really heart-centered person. Yeah. This guy has been transforming lives of entrepreneurs, athletes, and artists for the last 2 decades by helping them growing their peace and success through growing themselves. And the most important thing about him is that he is really one of the most impactful mind shifter and perspective taker I've seen. And honestly, I've seen a lot of people. And that's what drove me to him, that I really wanted to bring you this person here to help you to see the world in more empowering and stronger way. So I'm really delighted to present you with John Patrick Morgan.
Hey, thank you so much. Hey, Jimmy. Thank you. That was really beautiful.
Yeah, I'm super grateful that you're here. Do you want to share something more about yourself before we dive into the questions?
No, not particularly. I love sharing who I am through just sharing perspectives about the world, and it kind of comes through. You'll openly share within the context of your questions. So let's dive in.
Okay, so I just want to read something from your bio, and I'll ask you several questions about it because I was really curious about this stuff. And I'm going to tell you, I see that you're a very deep person, but at the same time analytical. So you put these two things together in a very interesting way. And I think that helps people to understand more abstract concepts in a really simple way. That's your superpower, in my opinion, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
So now what I wrote, I'm just going to read what you have there. So you say that you help people to discover how their mind creates their reality and how through opening their heart, they can access deeper fulfillment and greater material results. So I have several questions here. The first one, and there are actually two, is there an objective reality? And the second one here is, what is reality and what is illusion?
So for the first question, my answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's not like, to me, I'm certain in my uncertainty. And so I'm really comfortable and relaxed in that answer of I don't know. To me, I don't know is an answer, and it's a beautiful one, and it's one I'm happy living as the expression of I don't know if there is an objective reality. And it's an existential perspective. It's like, hey, maybe everything's just made up. Maybe there is no objective. And then what? So it's not I don't know, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've had to go find out. It's like I don't know. Therefore. Then what? And so my answer to then what is, well, I don't know whether our reality is objective or not, or if there is one. So I'm just going to create reality. And then so the closest thing I have to truth is experience. And so I concern myself with that. It doesn't mean that I ignore what might be objective reality, i.e. gravity, traffic, cars walk, I'm not going to walk out into a street, but that's not so that would be like, if I was walking out to the street, that would be saying there's no objective reality. I'm not saying there's no objective reality. I'm just not saying that there is. So I'm going to dance with it. And so I'm in the middle. And this is why I have this on my wall behind me for those who see the video version of this. It's a yin yang, it's a different version of it. It's like trees and roots growing into each other, but I'm interested in the middle way and the integration of alternate possibilities. And what was your second question again?
What is illusion and what is reality?
Yeah, I think it's what we decide. First of all, we get to pick, because I don't know if I could say objectively this is illusion and objectively this is reality, then I'm saying yes to your first question. So the I don't know what's objective, if there's an objective reality, is I never know what's true. I wrote recently, just as a little social media share, truth is a prison. And, people interpret that in different ways. One guy was saying, truth is liberating. And I thought that was interesting because I wasn't saying just because you're in a prison that you're not free. My point with truth as a prison is that it just traps you in one way of seeing and thinking. Right? You can be in a prison and you can have the experience of freedom, but it's not about your personal experience. It's about like, what are you capable of even thinking about? When something's true, you cut off thought in other directions. And so I don't know what's objective reality. I don't know what's reality and what's illusion for sure, but I get to decide. I get to choose. This is illusion. This is reality. And I experience one versus the other. And so I have a story that I live out around illusion and reality. What's real is what I'm experiencing, I would say.
So you choose your reality in a
Yeah.
way. That's what you share with. Yeah, that's the thing which I think it's a question which a lot of people ask themselves, and I'm really touched by what you said about, if you think that this is the truth, it actually can constrict you in some way, because it puts you in one place and you choose that this is the only thing which exists, right?
Yes, which is healthy and safe for the human body, especially to do. Like, I choose that it's true that if I walk out in traffic, I'll get hit and die. Like, I'm choosing that it's true. The fact of the matter is it's not necessarily true. People have walked out in traffic, gotten hit and not died. People have walked out in traffic and not even gotten hit. But like, I'm choosing that it's true, that it's, you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm living as the expression of it's truly dangerous and it will truly, and so truth is a prison is not about like, oh, therefore don't accept anything's true. And so when I say I choose my reality, it's not like I'm ignoring everybody else's. And like, a lot of what people believe is real is probably a good idea. So most of what I choose to be reality is going to be the same that you choose to be reality. Like 99.9% of it. I'm just as interested in that 0.1% that we're like, if I were to play with this, if I were to bend this part of reality, maybe nothing bad will happen. And actually, maybe something greater will happen than is happening for everybody else because they believe in it that way.
Absolutely, man. That's great answers. Thank you, man. So I would like to ask you the other question which I have about what I wrote, what I was reading about you in your bio was about the heart. This concept of heart is very, in my opinion, very often abstract. What is this heart we are connecting to? And actually, how can we actually open this heart? So my question towards you is that one. When you talk about heart, what are you referring to? And how can you open this heart?
Yeah, good questions. So when I'm referring to my heart, I'm referring to the organ that pushes the blood through my body, the literal physical heart. And the heart has a lot of nerves around it, and it has neurons around it, and it has the capacity to process information, just like your brain, and it's connected to your brain. And so it's not this dumb organ that just pumps blood like a water pump. It's an organ that pumps blood throughout your body, but it also has a level of thinking to it. And it also has a part of your consciousness, right? And so it's a feedback between your heart and your brain. Like, no neural activity goes in one direction. It's all goes in both directions. And so if you have the thought of something that's sad, you feel sadness in your heart because there's communication and your heart literally aches, right? But also the way that your heart is functioning is informing your brain about how you feel. And so if your heart is beating fast, then your brain gets the idea that there's something going on here, right? Like, I won't get specific about what that is, but so one of the things that I'm interested in is not only the emotional, philosophical, conceptual ideas of the heart, but also the actual biological functioning of the heart and the relationship between those things. So I've studied, I'm not a cardiologist by any means, but I've read about and learned about like how the heart works, especially the way the heart beats. One of the things I've gotten really into is a thing called heart coherence by the Heart Math Institute. And what they do is they study the rhythm of the heart and the relationship between the heart rhythm and how much you're feeling emotionally at peace versus emotionally stressed. And so there's a thing called heart rate variability. So what I didn't know, which is basically how the heart works, is as we breathe in, our heart rate increases, and as we breathe out, it decreases. And so that's a simple explanation as to why if we do a breathing practice where we breathe out for more than we breathe in, like a long out breath and a short in breath, we'll spend more time decreasing our heart rate than increasing it, and our heart rate overall average will lower. So we can decrease our heart rate by breathing in quick, breathing out very slowly, and the net is a slowing down of your heart rate. So but then there's another thing called heart coherence, which is if you breathe in and then breathe out and then breathe in and breathe out, each time your heart rate goes up and down, there'll be a difference from one cycle to the next around what the average heart rate is. So it might be getting a bit complex, but what you can start to do is you can realize if I can breathe really evenly, then my heart rate speeding up and speeding down will start to become even over time. And as that happens, the cycle becomes rhythmic. And as a cycle becomes more and more rhythmic, you create a coherence. And that coherence starts to build up because your heart also emits electromagnetic radiation, very, 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 very subtle. Or it might just be electrical field, but I think it's probably electrical field, not EMF. But anyway, it emits a field. And the more coherent your heart is over time, the more that field is coherent and then reverberates out and extends further out of your body. And this can actually be measured external to the body. So the more coherent it is, the higher the amplification of it is. So you start to realize that, wow, this thing's not just pumping blood through me. It's a thing that has a direct connection to my brain. And when it's more in coherent rhythm, it informs my brain that we're cool, we're relaxed, we're at peace. And so then I have more peaceful thoughts. I can open my perspective and my focus and see with more creativity. I have a higher level functioning capable of my neocortex when my heart is in coherence. This is measurable, like in people's emotional state, what they report when their heart is in coherence versus what they report when it's out. And so that's just a little snippet into that. And the other thing that I often do too is like we use the language that's metaphorical, like, what does your heart want? What would you love? What would you love is like is a question that really says, what do you want from your heart? And this isn't just the language, the metaphors that we use actually emerge from our relationship to our body. All of our way of being in the world emerges from our relationship to our body. And so that when you ask somebody, what would you love or what does your heart want? They think about their desire from the center of their chest. And when you think about your desire from the center of your chest, you're actually processing that question, not just with your brain, but with your brain and a little bit of neurology and neurons in your heart area. And so the answer that your subconscious gives you comes from that relationship between your heart and your head. And so you could ask the same question, like I've asked, like, what do you want from your balls for a guy? Or what do you want from your ovaries for a woman? Or what do you want from your vagina, penis, right? It's like when you take a nerve center and you metaphorically put it into the question, it puts attention with your consciousness on that area and it brings it into consideration. And whatever the result is the creative output of your brain in relationship with that nerve center, and it gives you a different perspective. And you try this. You can say next time, instead of what do I want, it's like, what would I want from my head? What do I want from my heart? What do I want from my balls? And you'll probably get 3 different answers. And now you know why you have a conflict inside, because different parts of your body want different things. Wow. Even left to right hemisphere has different desires and different wills, the research shows. So that's a long answer. But there you go.
It's a great answer, man. I mean, I haven't expected that at all. So it's a really, really great answer. So the last question I have around that is, how do we create our reality? Because you say we are creating our reality. Our mind creates our reality in a way. How do we do that? What's your
well, there's so many levels to the question how. So I'll start at the top. The surface level of it is our actual reality in the sense of what's in my material world. Like, is there a roof over my head? Do I have somebody else in my life that seems to be there every day that I might call my girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, something like that? That is created through our actions. All the results that we get in the material world come through our activity in the material world. Now, our actions can be very, macro and obvious, like you have a conversation or you pick up the phone or you just move something physically, right? Like that's an action. But I also use actions to mean like the way that I express myself in my emotions, like the way that my facial expressions, all of my subconscious behaviors, just the energy that I exude. My action is also the field of my heart. right? Like there's an activity that my heart is producing as an energy and that's coming out of me, and that's subtle, 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 but it's part of my action. And so then the next question is, where do my actions come from? My actions come from the state of my being. And what does that mean? Well, the state of my being is like, in any moment, what am I being? Who am I being? What is the internal experience that I'm having emotionally, but also what is my way of making meaning in the world that's giving form to that experience? So that is like how I'm representing reality and how I'm feeling. All of that in one moment is my being. And then that is where my actions come through and from, whether it's my subconscious behaviors or my literal macro actions, which then produce all the results that I get in my world. And so then the next question is, where does your being come from? Well, I just kind of hinted towards it when I said, it's what you're feeling, but it's also the way you're representing reality, the way you're seeing things. And so how do I create my reality external is I focus on creating my internal reality, because that produces my being, which produces my actions, which produces my external material results, which is my external reality. And so, and the next question is, we can go there if you like, but how do you create your internal reality? Is that the next question? Okay.
That's a good question. That's
awesome.
a good question. Yeah.
Well, the first part is realizing that you can't not create internal reality, and we're always creating internal reality. And so in order to see that, you have to first is to see that there is an internal reality that's distinct from the external, like to cultivate some mindfulness, to see the illusion, right? To see that like there's what I'm experiencing and then what's happening. And there's lots of classic examples, like, everybody can relate to thinking one thing is happening behind a door and then being so sure of it and having emotions about it and opening the door and realize, oh, it's something totally different. It's like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's so silly. But that is literally happening in every moment with everything. We just tend to get it like quote unquote right most of the time, but that doesn't make it true. It just makes our map of internal experience tends to fit that thing out there. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So when we can start to see that that's how it works, then we can start to investigate, what is the reality that I'm living? Like one of the ones that I'm working on right now is like, just in the midst of it, I was like, what is my reality around eating? Because it made huge changes in my behavior of eating by changing my relationship to hunger. For 40 years, well, since I learned this, I don't know, maybe I was 3 or 4, 5, 6, I learned the idea that if you're hungry, that means you're supposed to eat. That was my reality. And so anytime I was hungry my entire life, I ate, because that's what you're supposed to do. Hunger means eat. Hunger is a signal to eat. That's just what I believed. That was my entire reality, as it is for most people, but not all, but most. It's not mine anymore, because I started to question that. I was like 99.9% of people, or maybe 999%, whatever, believe that. But what if it's not true? Because I'm compelled. I can't not eat when I feel hunger. And I started getting interested in the idea of fasting and prolonged fasting. And it felt like a challenge to me, because to do a long fast, which has benefits for longevity, cellular regeneration, weight loss as well, to do that felt like in opposition to what just is true for me, which is if I'm hungry, I'm supposed to eat. So I was like, well, what if it's not true that hunger means you're supposed to eat? And so I started researching what the hunger pain actually is. And I learned about how it's an electromagnetic impulse that pushes, or it's a wave of electrical activity, I guess, not electromagnetic, that pushes the stuff out of your stomach into your low intestinal tract to clean your stomach out, to make sure everything's digested, and it's like, and it's actually a signal of cleansing. And it's like, and so if I'm feeling that means my body is cleansing itself. And it also means that it's not busy digesting food. It's actually got space and energy to give my energy to somewhere else other than my metabolizing stuff in my stomach, which means my cells are now regenerating. It's like, wow, so hunger isn't a signal to eat. Hunger is healing. And so now I've created a new reality for myself. And I won't go into the details about how I made that true for me, but like there's different practices that I have that take this new idea and inculcate them as a subconscious belief and idea about what is and how the world works and what hunger actually is. And so I literally subconsciously relate to hunger now as healing. So if I get a hunger wave, I'm not like, oh, I got to go in the kitchen. I get this moment of gratitude and joy from my body doing that thing, healing itself. And sometimes like, oh, I don't want to eat yet. I'm just doing all this great healing. I'm getting stronger and healthier right now. And so it's a new reality that creates a new state of being, that when there's food while I'm fasting, or if I get a hunger wave, is a new action, which is to not eat, which then results in the new results of the new actual reality of a healthier body, greater vitality, lower body fat percentage. And it's no effort, no force, no motivation even needed.
Wow.
Is that a good example?
It's a great example, man. It's a great
Cool.
example. Definitely just the question which I have in my head out of that is, can you suggest, or do you have some kind of very short process you're using, or some process you're using in order to change your reality or perspective? Do you do something specific about it, or you just every time is different for you? I mean, how do you do that? I mean, because in order to, as you said, if I followed you right, you have external reality, you have your actions, you have your being, emotions, and you have your perspective, or the way you see the world, your internal reality. Yeah. So you start from the internal reality. You do something there in order to change of the next one.
Yeah.
So what do you do there? Is it something specific, or every time is different?
Well, I'll go back to that example. I mean, it's different every time, but the verb to be in the English language, to be is there it is. There's different forms of it. Is, was, am, are. Like this verb to me is the thing that constructs our conceptualization. So who I am, what is, what was, what will be, right? Hunger is healing. That's what George Lakoff, a cognitive scientist, would call a metaphorical mapping, a conceptual mapping. And so basically in our brain, there's like a neural center for the concept of healing, and there's a neural center for the concept of hunger. And when you do hunger is healing, what happens is I create protein synthesis and new neural synaptic connections across between these two things. And the stronger the link between these two things are, when one lights up, the other one is activated. And so it's also in a certain direction, like hunger is healing, source is target. So the second thing, the way that we tend to use it in language, which evidences how it works in our brain, is a direction to it. So when I say hunger is healing, I'm taking the neural connection, the neural network of healing, and I'm plugging hunger into it. So if I want to know what hunger is, I go find out by looking at healing. And so in that same way, when it's like, I am a present and patient father, I'm taking my neural synaptic centers of presence and my neural synaptic centers of patience and my neural synaptic centers of kindness and my neural synaptic centers of fatherhood. And I'm plugging my identity, my sense of self into that. I am these things. So I am kind. It's like, I know what kindness is, and that's the source. And by speaking, I am this, I plug one into the other. But what does that mean to plug one into the other? Well, when I speak the sentence, I am present, the word I comes out of my mouth. It can be just empty words. We can speak and not be connected. But if I actually speak it slowly and with presence, and I say the word I bring to life in awareness myself, right? The identity, my sense of identity. It's like when I say, you can be like, I, blah, blah, blah. Or you can be like, I, and it's like, whoa, it evokes, holy fuck, I'm here. This existential awakening moment. It's like, boom, I. This thing here, this body, this spirit, this being, I am. And it's like this, when you speak the word am with real presence, or is with real presence, you realize that it's not a description of objective. It's an act, it's an invocation, it's an act of creation. I am present. Then it's like, it's just literally like taking a plug and putting it into the wall. It's like boom, and then the light turns on. There's a connection, and it's a momentary experience. And every time we see it and hear it and feel it, there's protein synthesis happening in our brain, new neural synaptic connections, and it gets a little bit stronger. And the more we do it, the stronger it gets, and the more we live it out and we have actual experiences of it in the world, and then it's reflected back to us and it feeds in. Like before this interview today, you said something that you also said in the intro about like you being really good at helping people to shift perspectives. And I just closed my eyes and put my hand on my heart and said, I really want to receive that. Thank you. And that's a way for me to not just have your words go in one ear and one out the other, but I want to grab it and get a little protein synthesis. I want some new neurons in favor of that, right? Like I want to actually feel it, because when I'm feeling it, then I'm producing a memory in my mind. I'm strengthening those connections.
Wow. So you kind of, as you said, you, as I understand, what you do is, it sounds like, I don't know if you call it affirmations, but it sounds in this direction, like you are affirming to yourself, but you're affirming it, but in more embodied way, like you are just accepting it. And do you do that like, every morning, every evening, or you're doing it all the time? How do you do it?
Both.
Both.
So yes, it's like affirmations, but most of the research on affirmations, like the psychologists have done, has shown that they can be not work, but also counterproductive. And it really comes down to the subtlety and the nuance that you're picking up on here, which is not just about saying some words. Like if you just say like, oh, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, and you think you're ugly, it's actually going to be a subtle form of self-abuse, because subconsciously you're going to be like, no, you're not, stop saying it. You just feel worse and worse and worse. And that's what the research shows. And so the nuance is, the subtlety is getting a much deeper relationship with your body and the subtle responses of your nervous system. Like if I say I am present and I get a tightness in my heart, that tightness is way more important than the words. Like, and so I want to stop and be like, whoa, what's that about? Oh my gosh, yes. And then I get a flash of yesterday when my son was asking to talk to me, and I pulled my arm away and said, I got to finish on my iPhone or something. And it's like, oh, I feel bad and guilty for that. And this is where the open heart in the bio piece that you read comes in, right? Because it's like, unless I forgive myself for that, then I've got a blocked heart and I can't get connected. I can't plug this thing in. It's like one of those child safety things or in the outlet. Like you can't plug it in when that's in there. You gotta unblock before you can connect to it. So that's where I'll always prioritize making sure my heart is open, which for me comes through forgiveness or like a deep meditation practice and something like that.
Lovely, man. So actually, this piece you shared here, I think everyone who's listening to that, just remember this, what he said, because affirmations, I totally agree with you. They work, but they work if you embody them, if you feel them, if you connect them with also the emotions and feelings inside of you. Because if they're not connected, as you said, you just abuse yourself with them.
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful way of explaining. Thank you for that, man. And because we have like 7-8 minutes more, I just want to ask you 2 more questions in order to really finish in a great way. So the first one is, tell me, what was the most impactful mind shift you had in your life?
I think it was probably, you mentioned Eckhart Tolle earlier, funnily enough. I think it was probably the power of now. And that was my entry into mindfulness and mindful awareness. And I'm not wearing it now, but for many years I wore a necklace with the Chinese symbol for now or today on it. I think that's got to be it. It's like realizing that the only thing that we have is the present moment. And that everything else is a projection into some imagined future or a projection into some remembered past, but it's all illusion outside of this present moment. And so going back to your question about objective reality, if there is an objective reality, it's certainly in the present, right? And if I can access, I don't believe that I can access it, but time is certainly an obstacle. Time is an illusion for sure. And I just said for sure, but maybe I'm wrong, but so I have my things that I 99.99% believe in. I'm just not willing to philosophically say that they're true. So, but I operate as if time is an illusion most of the time.
How does this perspective help you? How?
It helps me to let go. All of my suffering is either an aversion or an attachment. An aversion of something I don't want to happen,
Mm.
or I think is happening and don't want to happen, or attachment to something I'd like to happen that I think isn't happening, or that needs to happen for me to be okay. And that all invokes time. And so in the present, there is no aversion, there is no attachment. You know, Krishnamurti, a philosopher that I really enjoy, says, in the absence of time, there is no fear. And I would say also in the absence of time, there is no desire. And so
Wow.
you can just be here now. And there's, you know, to me, it's been the gift of total peace. Whenever I'm not at peace, and I've forgotten that now is all there really is. So, yeah.
It's lovely, man. So the last two questions, which you can answer the way you want. You have 1-2 minutes. Just think about it, whatever it is.
Hmm.
I would like to ask every one of my guests these two questions. The first one is, what are you willing to give abundantly to the world? And the second one is, what are you willing to receive abundantly from the world?
What am I willing to give abundantly to the world? Who I am, which is a creation. You know, one of the things that I remind myself of regularly is my commitment is to constantly create myself as my way of serving the world, right? And so right now I'm working on cultivating a new relationship to eating. Part of the, you know, the hunger thing was part of that. And that is my gift to the world. If I can cultivate that, then I've got more to offer within the context of eating and food, of course, but even as a metaphor for other areas of life. The more that I can practice that and be skilled in it and have mastery in it, the more I can help. So I'm willing, most desire to abundantly give, like, who I am in the world. I also use an example to mark out what I mean by that. Is Roger Bannister was the first person to run a 4-minute mile, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, that's an example of, like, if we just do something and we go first, we create the possibility. Once he did it, lots of people did it. And so if I can be the Roger Bannister of certain ways of being that can give other people access to that, then that to me feels really fulfilling. And the other question is, what am I most willing to receive abundantly from the world?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the first thing that came to mind is money. I'm so happy and willing to
That can be.
yeah, I guess I'm just laughing because it's kind of culturally, like, maybe
Yeah.
uncommon for people to say, but, like, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I'm most willing to abundantly receive money from the world, in exchange for this that I'm willing to give abundantly. You know.
So whoever wants to receive what John is giving,
Yeah.
and you're willing to give some money for it, just go for it. That's
Go
it,
for
right?
it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so easy. I mean, that's a simple thing in life, right? You have something you are giving, you want to receive something, and I'm wishing you, before I ask you the last question, I'm wishing you, man, to receive abundantly lots of money, man, and
Thank you very much.
in order to give a lot
Mm-hmm.
of what you have, because you have a lot, really.
Yes. Thank you.
And to
Thank
buy
you.
this house in Hawaii. I was
Yeah.
listening some of the videos, you know, you
We've got
need
our
money
eyes
for
on
that.
some. Thank you. Yeah.
So the last question is, where do people can find you? Where is the most
Yeah.
suitable place to do that?
Yeah. My website, jpmorganjr.com,
Mm-hmm.
jpmorganjr.com, is a great place to sign up for my Creating Insights by email.
Mm-hmm.
So every week I put out 2 to 4 videos that are like 5 to 10 minutes long, where they're just sharing some new insight or perspective that's come through in my coaching with my clients or through my own self-work. And those go out everywhere on social and YouTube. And you can follow me all of those places as well. But I summarize them in short text emails. So for people that don't have a lot of time or don't want to watch 5 or 10 minute videos all the time, it's a great way to get, like, the summarized, just a nugget of the insight. And then through that, you'll also find out when I'm doing any kind of live webinars or anything. You can learn about my creating school, which is $100 a month to access all of the classes that I run for my clients, where I teach more deeply on these, like, they're 90-minute classes on the concepts, and loads of other programs. I have a program called Beyond Affirmations. It's part of Creating School. It's a 5-part series that really goes to the deep work around how I cultivate ideas about reality that create states of being, that create actions, that create the results that I want. And then of course my main thing is coaching. So I have a group called Creator Circle, that I run a few times a year. I've got one starting soon, and I've got space in it. And that's a group coaching program where I get to be with you, but it's at a fee that's affordable, more affordable for some people. And I have a handful of private clients that I work with for 6 months to a year or more. So all that's on my website.
Thank you, man. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
everything you shared today. Lots of golden nuggets, lots of great, mind shifts and perspectives. So, and most of all, thank you for your time. Really.
You're so
Thank you,
welcome.
JP. It was great to be here with us, and I'm definitely sure that people will be amazed by everything you say about life and about success and about prosperity, money, whatever it is there.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Great questions. I enjoyed.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Have a great time, and really hope seeing you again somewhere there.
Yeah, you will. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, man. Hey, guys. So today we had John Patrick Morgan with his amazing insights and perspectives about life, about prosperity, and about success. I hope that you enjoyed the episode and you found golden nuggets there too. I'm sure about this. So if you want to listen to this episode or previous episode of Mindshift, you can go to my website, dimitrolakov.com, and you can watch all of them. So I'm really wishing you a really, really great and successful week, and talk to you soon.